If we can all come to the table and then we'll get into the business and then you'll be free for the day, if not for the long weekend. So I hope you all have some nice plans to celebrate with your friends and family and get a bit of rest over the weekend. Not going to start with a mihi or karakia for this meeting because we've had that all in this morning's one. So bear with, this is just a quick machinery meeting to get through some things that we need to go through.
So just reconvening the meeting at 1 o'clock today. Apologies from Councillor O'Leary for absence.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Yeah. All those in favour? Yes.
Thank you. And just confirming the agenda today.
So moved. Seconder, please. Councillor Taylor. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you. And any declarations of interest?
Particularly interested.
No.
None at this time. Thank you. So the agenda is as. So we go to the first meeting requirements, which is item 5, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mothler, if for those who you haven't met, is our legal advice in-house, and so she will talk to this item so that those who are unfamiliar with it understand what we're doing here.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks for having me. I'm also going to speak with Becca Brooke, the Governance Manager, who you all know well. So there are just some requirements for the inaugural meeting which are set out in legislation, the Local Government Act, and this item just takes us through those requirements so that we can make sure that this first meeting is compliant. So there are 4 requirements and they're set out at paragraph 1 of the report. So you've already met the first one, you've all made your declarations this morning, so that's great. Item B is a general explanation of particular legislation. We'll deal with that in the next report. So this report deals with C and D at paragraph 1 there. So first, the fixing of the date and time of the first meeting of the local authority, and item D there, the election of the deputy mayor in accordance with clause 17 of the LGA. Shall I just talk through those items, or would you like to? I'll take the report as read and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. It's pretty straightforward. I'm happy to move. Seconded by Councillor McPherson. Thank you. No debate or conversation on that? No. Question? Sorry, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
So you've moved recommendation 12, is that correct? 12.
Where are we? 12.
Yeah, so it's in a bit of a different place at the moment in the report. So yes,
Yeah.
so it will be appointing the deputy mayor, which will be yourself. So that second one will take out.
Okay. As part of this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just wondered if I might be able to say something just very briefly.
Absolutely.
Your Worship. I just wanted to say I'm very honoured and privileged that you've put your trust in me for this role, and very much looking forward to working with you. And my excitement, I think, is added to by the fact that we've got a very interesting and progressive looking council that the voters have delivered us, and I think we can do great things. And I do want to do something which I should have done earlier this morning, and pay tribute to outgoing Deputy Mayor Martin Gallagher's performance. I thought he did a wonderful job. He was always a font of knowledge and a steady hand in a crisis, and I look forward to him continuing to play a really strong mentoring role, not just with the new councillors, but with myself and all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can add to that, very well said. And I want to thank you, Martin, for your long years of service in that role as deputy that you have had, and all the other portfolios that you've had a long time. And I think we would all agree that you have the deepest wealth and experience in the room, and you've always been an exceptional councillor that representing the city. So I'm really excited that I've given you a slightly new role around learning and development and mentoring, because I think you will play a very key part in the succession of other councillors, as you always have done. And I want to thank you for always being that person who is prepared to step in and help.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, but I do want to put the record straight slightly. The father of the House, that's the longest serving member of Council still alive, is Councillor Dave McPherson.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, since Councillor Thompson has been expecting some health problems for the older members, that we should have some medical checks for all of us, just in case.
Brilliant idea. Let's get that done next
Or at
meeting.
least a prescription from Councillor Kesh.
Yeah. I think we're all in good hands here.
Cyanide.
Always a step further. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And we've moved and seconded. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then we're on to the next item, which is item 6, isn't it? Explanation of the statutory matters. Councillor?
Thank you, Mayor Southgate. So continuing on from those legislative requirements for this first meeting, the Local Government Act requires the Chief Executive to give you or arrange for you an overview of key points of legislation. So attached to the report, you'll have a letter of advice from Tompkins Wake, Council's primary legal provider, one of Council's primary legal providers, which sets out a general explanation of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act, the Local Authorities Members' Interests Act, which goes on for some pages, particular provisions of the Crimes Act, the Secret Commissions Act, and the Financial Markets Conduct Act. I'll take the report as read, but happy to take any questions.
So I do have one question on page, just for what this means, page 11. There's a phrase there about conflicts of interest, etc. And there's a phrase there that's point 24 that asks or discusses the voting rule. You're not allowed to participate in discussion, yada yada, if you have an indirect pecuniary interest other than an interest in common with the public. Can you give me an example of what that looks like?
For example, if a councillor is a ratepayer and there's an item on rates, that's the fact that the councillor is a ratepayer is an interest in common with the public, being other ratepayers. If it went further than that and the councillor had a much more direct pecuniary interest in the item being discussed, then that wouldn't be in common with the public.
Okay.
So, for example, in the last term, Mayor Andrew did not involve himself in the conversation around the decision to increase the rates because he had a interest which is greater than in common from the community because of his individual holdings.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And should any councillor at any step, well, because we will fill out a declaration of interests, and if you're in doubt about any others that you might hold, it's a good time to talk with staff. And then as they come up, if an item comes up and you're concerned about it and you want to be as safe as possible, to be tested at that time to ask. And there's no harm in asking directly with this. And I think 9.9% of the time it's 99% as well.
So just thinking, so Mothla, during the term, because I remember when, our little interest came up last time, you gave the best advice you could, but then your advice or the legal team, or the council team was to go and get your own advice. Are you available for our advice or what?
My advice to you would be to get independent legal advice in those circumstances.
Okay.
It's not the role of council, and council as a whole is my client. It's not the role of council to give you advice on whether you're conflicted or not.
Right.
So we can guide you through the process and explain what the legislative requirements are, but that consideration as to whether there's a conflict is yours alone.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Point of order, on that particular point, in my experience, the Chief Executive has sometimes given advice himself. That's not just this one, that's previous ones, to councillors in those when the potential circumstances arise, or has arranged for support advice to support their decision making, not to make it for them, but in fact I believe one part of the Act talks about the Chief Executive having a role in that area too, certainly used to.
Yep, so generally when I'm involved in these conversations, I ask a whole lot of principle-based questions to help that elected member form, in case of the question related to last term, to enable those members to go through the process robustly. In the end, it's a self-determination, and so that self-determination requires you to take all necessary steps to ensure you're as informed as possible when you make that determination. And the questions I provide you, or the prompts I provide, are very much about helping that self-determination process. The Office of the Auditor General also provides support in that area in terms of, again, providing context for that conversation as well, and we do have the context for them to have that conversation also.
Okay, thank you. If in doubt, ask, and we'll either be able to provide advice of a generalised nature or point you in the right direction, is the summary of that, yeah? Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you. Just a question around point 38. So, Secret Commissions Act 1990. So, for the purposes of the Act, any elected member to give or receive, it's unlawful for any elected member to give or receive or solicit any gift or consideration of any kind, etc. So I'm just a little unsure about invitations to events, seats at matches, at Claudelands, etc., etc. I know there's a difference between a council-run event, but an event, let's say, that's run by an organisation that receives funding from council, if they send us tickets, is that deemed a gift as described?
So the purpose of the legislation isn't to stop the receipt of gifts, but to put a stop to the receipt of gifts in return for a councillor making a decision in a particular way that would favour the person giving the gift. So that's the key. So you can still receive tickets to go to an event, but the key point is not to receive those tickets in exchange for making a decision at council in a particular way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's just the way it's worded then. So if there's no comments around that, then it's fine.
Yep.
Yep.
And we do have a register of gifts when you receive something to keep it noted, you know, whatever it is, bottle of wine, you know, anything. And there's an amount on that, Becca, but I put everything anyway.
There's no specific amount, but if you do receive someone, we just receive a gift, we encourage you just to let us know and we note it down so that if we get any questions on it, you can say that it's been declared. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Can I suggest, following on from Councillor Mark's question about conflicts of interest, that you make available by link or whatever the Auditor General's notes, because I think there's about 50 pages of them from memory.
It's included in your induction
But
pack.
they do give you examples and scenarios which follow Richard's principles-based questions that he would ask, and quite useful to refer to at different times during the term when potential conflicts or perceived conflicts of interest might arise.
And I think the key word you tap on there is perceived conflicts, because quite often the conversation I have with councillors is there's no real conflict at all, it's just the perception there could be. The induction pack has those guidelines included, and we also, as part of the induction program, will be having a conversation more in depth regarding conflict of interest as well. It's an important topic, and it's a confidence topic for the community, and so it's good to have that conversation in the open with the community able to look in it as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No further questions on that? Someone happy to move? Or Councillor Taylor, Councillor Bunting. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. That's it, isn't it? Yep. That brings us to the end of the meeting. And informally, a number of people have approached me with various levels of conversation around the terms of reference, and I did send out an email yesterday. Work in process at the moment, it's with the executive team, chief executive, and governance team and Mothler to look at from a legal perspective in a drafting phase. I know everyone's eager to see what they're doing, to know exactly what they're doing. Please bear with us for a couple of days. We've got a long weekend in between us. Go off and enjoy that. And I can assure you that we'll get to the detail later in the week. And you may talk to that, yes?
Yep. Mayor Paula set out some very high-level principles for the terms of reference, and we've just got the task of actually filling in that detail to make them something worthwhile that can be looked at. At the moment, it's too high level to give that direction. There's a verbal conversation between myself and Paula that's been translated to Becca that's now getting the detail filled in.
And we will be looking, we've got some new committees, we will be looking for input, but you've got to start with at least a framework to have a discussion and that's where we'll go. So I just want you to feel relaxed and confident that we're working on it, and of course the staff have been rather distracted with this set of business and getting after the election, and now I think we can turn our attention to how we build those committees going forward. I think it's going to be very exciting.
Just raising something that I should have raised earlier on too about the conflicts of interest and the likes. It doesn't say anything about gifts between members, and my birthday is this weekend.
Yeah.
So feel free, it's Sunday. I'll accept cash, FPOS, or any small gift. Yeah, I hope so, yeah.
Yeah, party at your house, is it?
Definitely,
All right,
definitely.
good.
Or if anyone's heading away, it'll be a party at theirs.
All right. All right. Thank you, everyone, and please enjoy a long weekend. I'm very excited to have such a really good team, because as I look around the table, I see lots of passion, enthusiasm, knowledge, experience, and if we all work together, how awesome will that be for the city? So thank you, everyone. Yeah, you get paid next week, so that's good, right? Pay a few campaign bills.